North Carolina. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, breaking with convention. The American Muslim Democratic Caucus met here in Charlotte just a few hours before President Obama's address, one day after the controversial vote over language in the Democratic platform over Jerusalem. Party leaders forced through a platform change on Wednesday to reinstate references to God and to the view that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. The language in question was included in 2008, but was not included when delegates approved the 2012 platform earlier this week. The recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital stands in contrast to long-standing U.S. government policy, which calls for the city status to be resolved through negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. Well, speakers at the American Muslim Democratic Caucus event included Ebrahim Rasool, South Africa's ambassador to the United States. Ambassador Rasul is a South African Muslim who was involved in the anti-apartheid movement, a member of the African National Congress. I began by asking him why he was in Charlotte for the Democratic National Convention.
Look, I think that all embassies are represented both in Tampa and in Charlotte, so I don't come here because of a political preference. I think we do come because we have a long history as a political community in South Africa who've been under oppression. We've shared many of the suffering and the joys of the civil rights era. We've learned many of the lessons. We sing "We Shall Overcome" in South Africa in our darkest days. We've drawn on the speeches of both people like Martin Luther King as well as Robert F. Kennedy when he came to Cape Town. And so I think that there's a heartbeat, but there's also political evenness that we exercise. And I think that certainly observing what is happening here is a very important part of our work.
Can you talk a little about your background in South Africa?
I'm a member of the African National Congress. I've spent some of my time in prison where I met Nelson Mandela for the first time.
Robben Island?
When he was moved to Pollsmoor Prison in Cape Town, that's where I met him. I've served in the government of the Western Cape, whether as Minister of Health right up to the Governor of the Western Cape Province. And I'm now ambassador in Washington. I am recognized as a fairly active Muslim, and I am also very active globally as Muslims to try and reposition Muslims away from a path that is caught up in the inertia of orthodoxy on the one hand and the nihilism of extremism on the other hand. We're trying to find that middle path, and so my presence at the American Muslim Democratic Caucus lunch is really to try and understand where does this middle ground exist within the American Muslim community. Are there alternatives to the siren songs from the extremists, and are there alternatives to the inertia of an orthodoxy that can't respond to the new challenges that Muslims are facing in a globalizing world?
Do you have a comment on what happened yesterday on the floor of the convention around the amendment that reinserted Jerusalem as the proper capital of Israel in the Democratic National Platform?
Before I came to this luncheon, I attended a forum by the American Jewish Committee in which quite a few senators and congresspeople spoke, leaders of the Democratic Party, trying to explain away to the Jewish community the issues around the Jerusalem platform. I thought I needed to say something in that forum, and I said I thought it was a strategic masterstroke to leave it out of the platform that Jerusalem should be the capital of Israel. That I think that it may be placating now to put it back in, but in the long-term interest of a two-state solution and of Israel in the Middle East, the mediator between the Palestinians and the Israelis should not prejudge the final outcome of the negotiations. And I thought that it was at first a tactical masterstroke to remove it from the platform so that the US can go in there as a careful, even-handed mediator and get the process starting again. But the moment the governing party and the government of the United States is forced to say that it supports Jerusalem as the capital, you then raise the possibility that can this be the most effective and the most even-handed and the most impartial mediator when they themselves have prejudged the outcome of the negotiations.
And what was the response at this gathering of the American Jewish Committee?
I don't think that there was too much of a tolerant atmosphere. I had just seen someone before me being asked to quieten down. Another person left because they couldn't raise the issue of Gaza and all of those kind of things. I was treated a lot more respectfully because of being ambassador and because of the South African example, but I think there was an attempt to make me believe that there is no contradiction between the U.S. recognizing Jerusalem as the capital and the status of Jerusalem still being up for negotiation in the final status talk. I didn't buy that, but I thought it was sufficient that I made my point.
When you got up on the stage here, you said this made you think about Nelson Mandela. Explain why.
I think it was the fact that despite being a 3% Muslim minority in South Africa, Nelson Mandela had seen the worth of people before he saw the way they prayed, the way they dressed, and what they ate. That he had appointed key people to key cabinet positions. I found myself as the Minister of Health and soon to be the leader of the ANC in the Western Cape and later its governor. And Nelson Mandela, his humanity preceded whatever other identity he had. And this gathering reminded me of Muslims growing and in number within a party, growing in power within a party, and therefore my prayer was that whatever they come into this kind of power with, they should be humbled with pure intentions, with a clear set of values, but most importantly, not be corrupted by power that is gathered in the course of a political struggle.
The issue of the 34 mine workers that were killed in South Africa. Can you talk about what happened and what should happen?
I think at the end of the day, we are looking to the police investigations, the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, and the Cabinet Committee that have been asked to look into it to tell us exactly what has happened. But whatever the technicalities, whoever shot first, why people were armed, why the police did what they want to, did they do things properly, whatever the outcome of that, there is an undeniable tragedy that I think must be acknowledged. That 44 people can't die in a course of a strike without South Africa pausing to reflect what this means. I believe at the end of the day, the kind of compromises we made in 1994 are coming back to haunt us. In 1994, we took the political kingdom, we delayed the economic kingdom. I believe that the patience of blacks have not been rewarded with a requisite generosity from whites and from the owners of our economy. That if workers don't even have basic amenities, then who can argue with their right to be angry? And I think it is the most important wake-up call that South Africa can have, tragic as it is, to address the need for the second transition in South Africa so that we can begin to share out that economy, make people's lives better, and ensure that we don't have an equilibrium in society, but certainly that we move now to a greater harmony in our society.
Just a point of clarification, when you said it's not clear who shot first, there was no contention that the miners had guns, was there?
No, what I'm saying is that those are issues that in the course will be worked out. I think that the bigger debate will be whether we are building a foundation of justice and a foundation of equality and a foundation of sharing the wealth of our country more equitably.
And what would that look like?
I think that we have been diverted from the principle of a shared prosperity to the mechanisms. Should it be nationalization? Should it be business as usual? Should it be more black economic empowerment? I believe that being distracted by all of those mechanisms have actually taken our eye off the very powder keg that I think South African society is sitting on.
Are you talking about land reform?
I think that the second transition has to be about land reform. It has to be about reforming the ownership structures of our mines. It has to be about greater income equality in our country. It has to be about all the things, the service delivery backlogs, the housing backlogs that still persist. It basically says, let us manage the second transition before we don't have patience left from those that are making enormous sacrifices.
Do you think the killing of the miners at the Marikana Platinum Mine can be compared to what happened in 1960 in apartheid South Africa in Sharpeville, when 69 people were killed by the apartheid police?
I don't think so. I think that the origins are completely different. I think that that there isn't the racial element to it. There isn't the suppression element of a totalitarian state behind it. And so I think that people often need metaphors to make sense of events that happen. Events should be done on its merit, should be judged on its merit. It's not that it's less of a tragedy. It's in fact more of a tragedy that it happened in a post-apartheid South Africa, but it is not comparable to a great tragedy under apartheid. The intentions were different by the apartheid police, the mindset was different by the apartheid police, and the means of the apartheid police were different. And so I don't think that there are easy comparisons, but there is certainly comparable tragedy in both events.
That's Ebrahim Rasool, South African ambassador to the United States. Coming up, we continue the conversation. He talks about his meeting with a younger Senator Barack Obama in 2006 in South Africa, as well as the militarization of Africa, drones, and President Obama as a son of Africa as well. Coming up in a minute.